Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Turner. I'm the director of the China Environment Forum at the Wilson Center. I've been working at this think tank for 23 years, bringing together Chinese and US NGO, business, government, and research folks over that time. And here today on the eve of the Convention on Biological Diversity, we are having a green tea chat on the topic, a Chinese NGO building global networks for biodiversity. And my tea partner today is my good friend Peng Kui, who's from the Global Environmental Institute. It's a Beijing-based NGO. He'll tell you a little bit more about it shortly. He's the manager of their ecosystem and conservation and community development program. And today he's going to be talking to us about work that both kind of research and pilot projects that he and his team have been doing in China and in other countries around the world around conservation and biodiversity. So welcome again to the China Environment Forum, Peng Kui. And you've been circling the globe. You were just in Egypt for the COP27, and
Yes.
now yesterday you arrived in Montreal. You're a little jet lagged maybe for the Convention on Biodiversity. So you're just kind of a COP globe circler here today. And Peng Kui surprised me. He actually prepared a PowerPoint for some of our questions. So why don't you share your PowerPoint and I'll tell people what we're going to be talking about today. So I asked Peng Kui to talk to us just a little bit about what GEI is. It's a dynamic NGO in China. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Okay.
And then he'll talk a little bit about their conservation work, both at home and abroad, and what they're doing at the CBD. I want to remind the audience that we have underneath your screen, there is an event chat box. Please submit your questions. Peng Kui is going to talk. He's just got a few slides, a lot of pictures and stories to kind of bring to life the work that he does. So again, submit your questions, say who you are if you can, and thank you again for coming, both the audience and Peng Kui. So go ahead, Peng Kui, tell us we're in Egypt at the beginning.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm so glad to be here to give my talk, especially for introduce a Chinese NGO, how can they work abroad, maybe in China and abroad. Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous because when I just saw the email list, there's so many audience coming here from all over the world already. And I'm very glad so many people are interested in Chinese NGOs work. So I'm excited actually. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried about because my English is not so good. But and also there are so many questions. Maybe I cannot answer this well. So forgive me that. But I will try my best to introduce a little bit what we're doing. Let's begin. You look at these pictures. I just come from COP27. I was very impressed by Egypt and also especially by the topics about the climate change and biodiversity. Because in 2018, there's a COP14 just in Shamsa in Egypt. That's why I went to Shamsa, and then I just following these steps to Kunming and then to the Montreal to the day before yesterday. So right now I just come to the Montreal, and I want to share what the Chinese NGO, the GEI Global Environmental Institute did in the past, and what we will do and how we can maybe get more cooperation, especially for the international cooperation with different NGOs, non-state actors, government agents, or any other partners we can just do together. My name is Peng Kui, work for Global Environment Institute, and we also have a Chinese Civil Society Alliance. We call it CSABC in China. I just the people who just initiated this little work. So this time I also represent for the CSABC and also introduce some work. Who's GEI? Many people maybe have no idea about GEI. So actually GEI is a Beijing-based Chinese NGO. It's a non-government organization. And we established in 2004 and have more than 20 people, staffs, full-time staffs over there. And actually, as first NGOs who can just went abroad for Chinese NGOs, that's not easy for us because in China, you know, most NGOs just do their work, especially for environment NGOs. They just do the work in China. But for GEI, when we just established in 2004, we just went out to Laos and also Myanmar and 80 other countries. We try to just build some bridge between China and other countries, especially because China's going outside at every side, actually, you know. So that's it's hard to find. It was hard to find some NGOs or especially organizations can just do work with the Chinese government and other, you know, host countries, especially for the bridge. So for the communication, especially for the environment issues. So as for us, we have our missions as beginning that we want to design, execute, and support market-based model and policy recommendations that can maybe serve environmental problems in order to achieve development. So at the beginning, we really focus on the environmental issues. At the same time, we really just interested about the market-based solutions. That means we were so welcome the business can just involved in environmental issues in China and also abroad. So we developed some method or theory for our work. For example, first, since we need to do some conduct some researches. This research maybe is not different from traditional academic research. It's really like how we can implementation, especially use the series and some research results. And the second one, we really implement the pilot project in different places. That is can test how we can performance. And then we can go to the policy recommendation to, especially for China's central government and the provincial government. And then we can also go to the other countries' government to try to change some policies. Yeah, this is our, you know, work. So far, we have, this is not just in China, we have different kind of projects. It's not just in China, also especially for the Southeast Asia countries, Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia, Vietnam, and now we have also Indonesia and Sri Lanka and other countries right here. And we also have some projects in Africa. So actually for GEI, we have four parts, four directions. So we can have ecosystem conservation, energy, overseas investment, and environment, and marine conservation. That's it. Yeah, why we just focus on the long-state actors is, you know, is as you know very well. So long-state actors include the business, youth, the women, the local communities, and indigenous people. They really play very critical roles on the environmental governance. We think this is also very important for the international or global environmental governance. We think NGO, you can say, according to this research, we can say the NSAS and non-state actors were so in biodiversity and climate changes together. They were so involved in the CBD and the UNFCCC's negotiation, dialogues, and bridging and funding. So ever since you can see the different, you know, mixed roles they can just play. So that is why we focus on that. Actually, it's very interesting that when I just went to the COP27, we know that the subject for COP27 is together for implementation. And for the COP15, they were so together for building a shared future for all life on Earth. So this is together, how we can together work. That is people really focus on. People really interested about that, how we can just work together. So that's really, really important. We think it's not just by NGO, by government parties. It's also about the together and cooperation, I think. So I can give a very simple examples how the GEI just do their work, especially for the biodiversity conservation work in China. We actually for 18 years ago, we introduced a model, we call it a community conservation concession agreement from Peru first. And then we introduced to China and localized this model to China. We really want to change some systems like the conservation sense just managed by government. It's not. It's really related to every non-state actors, include the local communities, indigenous peoples. But in the past, China have lost this idea, lost this concept. They think everything take responsibility by government. So that's not true. That's why we introduced this. We developed a model. I don't want to go to the detail of the model, but we can just let people know we can get negotiation and get agreement between different actors with their rights, with their duty, with their benefits from the conservation. So that's our basic concept. You can see how we can just implement this kind of conservation system into China's really conservation systems. So we have feasibility analysis, we can engagement with the local people, and also have the agreement as equal fair with the local people, and they can play important roles in this systems, and then we can help the local people or build their capacity for their conservation actions. And also we really believe that the local people should get benefits from their conservation activities or conservation implementation. So that can just support their biodiversity conservation. So we have implemented many pilot sites in China in different parts, include the national parks, nature reserves, and other very critical biodiversity places. You can say from east to west, from south to north. So this is really, really different places. You can see that. Of course, we have citizen science. Maybe several years ago, Jennifer also helped us to do some citizen science just with this kind of pilot science. We were so expanded this kind of models to across the China. So this is really different places. They can do different things, but in one concept is community-based conservation. You can just protect the biodiversity in China. So in the past almost 18 years, we do have protected some places. So based on this experience, we really thinking about how can we take action together. It's not just GEI, it's a small NGOs actually. It's not just like a WWF or WTNC, like in all over the world, they can have many stuffs. But we have really good models and many good pilot sites, demos. We can show people, and actually, such like GEI, there are many other NGOs who will do almost the similar things. So we think about how we can just work together. So that is why in 2017, GEI and other 22 Chinese NGOs foundations work together. We say we need to build nannies. These nannies can just help our country to protect their land at least about 1% of our land. This is the big goals or big target for us. It's not easy, especially in China. People think it's take responsibility by just governments, So that is include also Alibaba Foundation from other, Tencent Foundation, really very famous foundation in China. They can support us and work together. So you can say after 3 years, we have already recognized 51 several protected areas. It's account about 0.1% of our country land. So it's a long distance to go, but by 2030, we really want to achieve the targets, how we can protect the land, 1% of land of China, especially by the local people. That's a really, really important concept in Chinese people. So that's this, you can say the change. Every year we recognize this and help the people to involved in this protected area. So 2019, we know the COP15 will come to China. We know this is a big challenge, also big opportunity for Chinese NGOs, Chinese land-state actors. They can just involved in this global environment or biodiversity issues. So we just built another, an alliance. This alliance, we just need people join this international conference, and they can just discuss with the other people about the biodiversity conservation, and let people know what Chinese people doing. It's not just government doing. It's also really many people just doing together, right? So we launched our land-state actors of voluntary commitments. So how you can contribute to that? If you are a foundation, how much money you can put? If you are NGOs, you are indigenous people, or just the women, how we can just contribute to the biodiversity conservation and just show people, show your voice to the international community. So that is why we launched this. And according to CBD's website, you can find there are more than 500 pledges to the commitment to the biodiversity conservation. But how much from China? How many from China? It's 47 right now. It's account more than 10% just from China. And it's account 80% from Asia and Pacific. It's really, really different. It's not just keep silent. It's really means something from China. So that's the way just help the NGOs, help the foundations, and other non-state actors can just involved in this. So we also launched 100 global biodiversity good performance, and at COP15. We just show this 108 best practice from of the world. They can just show how we can do that. So, yep, we were so GEI just collaborated with other 5 NGOs in China and hold the COP15's NGO forum last year in Kunming. Yeah, unfortunately, many people cannot to Kunming. That's why we come to Montreal again. So we want to just push forward. So, that's this NGOs very successfully because we really include this local people. You can say that it's really indigenous people, really grassroots NGOs and other land-state actors can involved in this. And we were so initiative 2.25 billion RMB pledges to biodiversity and climate changes by the Chinese NGO the last year at this forum. I think this really contribute to our biodiversity conservation in China, especially by 2030. Well, yeah, we also want to have more, partners just to come together, especially between China and other countries. China is right now is the biggest investment maybe to many countries, especially on the Belt and One Road and Belt initiative countries. So we also built a platform between China and Africa CSO. There are just included, we included more than 160 NGOs and CSOs from China and Africa countries. So we have many dialogues and exchanges. We were so implemented joint projects. Look at this. It's just in Kunming. We have Africa, wildlife photos awards exhibition in Kunming. So let the Chinese people know what we are doing right here and what we should learn from Africa also. we also have this kind of joint project together. And we were so just a voice for the impacts between these different. So we joined together to launch the NGO forums from Africa. So African people can have their own phones in China also. So we do have some other kind of network. We try to just introduce some models to other countries. We also learn some more innovative, creative models from other countries. For example, we have built East and Southeast Asia Community Conservation Network. This includes 17 numbers organizations right now is from Southeast countries. So they are very interested about different models. They can try that and help the local people do. That is, for example, in Myanmar, we collaborated with 4 NGOs, Myanmar's NGOs, and improved the project, especially community-based project, for more than 60 years already. So we went to these places and worked with the local people and the different partners over there, and really just take actions on biodiversity conservation. Yep. So far, we did some actions for the KBS, it's key biodiversity areas, and we have 27 communities across Myanmar, and more than 20,000 farmers just involved in this kind of project. Yeah. And then we also, in recent 3 years, we expanded this kind of work to Indonesia, mangrove conservation, and to Myanmar's mangrove, and also Laos, between China and the cross-boundary wildlife trade. How can we prevent from the illegal wildlife trade between China, Laos, China, Myanmar? And we also have a project in the boundary, at the boundaries. So that is our work. We will so try to prevent illegal wildlife trade between China, ASEAN, Africa. I think we have this strong, we can become stronger between China or different countries. For example, from Africa to ASEAN to China. So that's a chain, but we can do more things to do that. And we will also try to build a bridge between China's government, companies, business with the other countries' companies, see how we can manage our governance cooperation for the sustainable forest, especially from Congo Basin and China. So that is our work. Last year, we just have other father just work between China and a brother. So that is let us work can go to South American. It's between China and GEI and Monte Grosso do Sul. We have a MOU to about the sustainable meat supply. So that is, you can see almost everything is just between China and other countries. We cannot do like WWF if they have their own local countries, but we really want to do something between China and other countries. And this is few just NGOs can do that. So we really hope more NGOs can just join that to do things. So yeah, I finally, I really want to just introduce a little bit our work, our activities at the COP15 in Montreal. So we just involved in participated in the legislation. We know there is OEWG open-ended working group legislation. It's for the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. So we were just participating in the legislation as an observer. And then we have a one-day event. It's about Action Zone. It's launched by the secretary, CBD secretary. And we have 2 side events on the December 9th and 13th. And we will also have other cooperation with different stakeholders and partners at Montreal, in Montreal. So if you are really interested in, please come here, and we can really just discuss this, how we can do more cooperation between GEI and other organizations if you are interested. And yeah, why is GEI? I maybe as 3 points about this. I think it's the first census we really, from the beginning, we have our mission on global environmental issues and sustainability. That is our mission. And the second sense, we think we can be a Chinese NGO hub who can connect China and abroad. So we are really open to all the NGOs and other non-state actors if you are interested too. So we think we can just help other Chinese NGOs also can do the same sense as NGOs in US, in Canada, or in other European countries. So we can try to that. And we also have many, we are educated international perspective staff. That is really important for GEI because these people all that just has the background for education in other countries. So you can come back to China and really contribute to this work. Yes, that is my introduction.
Great.
Yeah. If you have questions, please.
Yep.
Any question, I'd like to.
So you can take down your screen so you and I can talk for a few minutes. My AV folks said we could go a little bit past time. Great slides. Love the stories. Want to point out that the China Environment Forum, we've got a couple new projects. One is on climate and food, climate and agriculture. So I'll be working with the other Peng, Ren Peng at GEI, because he's looking at the climate footprint of agricultural imports into China. We'll do some comparison with the US. And he's also doing some work looking at how to green the Belt and Road in Southeast Asia. And I'm particularly interested in the mangrove folk work that they're doing down there. So yeah, this is awesome. So I got a couple questions, Peng Kui. One of them is from Mr. Vimin Tran from Colchester Global in the UK. And he asked that in the work that you're doing in China or overseas, is there things that you're doing that could help the UN Sustainable Development Goals, such as the life on land, combating desertifications? Can you give an example? Do you have any of your projects that help towards the SDG goals?
Yes, that's a good question. Actually, I think I can give an example from Myanmar, our project, Myanmar project. That's really good cases because when we just first time, at the beginning, we just focused on the biodiversity conservation. So how Myanmar can protect their original forest, especially by the local people. When we just went there, we found that maybe it's not the priority for the local people because they need some, forest or timbers for their fuel, making fuel. That's just interesting to say. If you want to do this, we did that in the past in China 30 years ago. We just cut down the trees and for them make fuels, but it's not sustainable. So we just help them say, if you can just use some new energy, for example, if you can just use the solar system, especially family solar system, so you can maybe avoid to cutting your trees or timbers over there. So but they have no money. They don't have this equipment there. But we see China has some, South climate change cooperation initiative. Why don't we use that? But they say, we don't have idea how we can apply for that. So we just try to the Myanmar's central government to apply for the South cooperation goods from Chinese government. We help them to write the application. We also try to help the Chinese government say what they need and what kind of individual family solar system can be good for them, because there's no 70% of this farmers has no electricity in Myanmar. So that is what we just try to bring this and to help these different parties can just arrive the agreement for the South cooperation climate change operation, and we input more than 200 million RMB's goods to the Myanmar's communities. But it's not just like free. We just need the local people maybe pay a little bit of payment to their community. This payment just for their maintenance for the equipment. So it's not just donation. It's really like, you must manage that sustainably. Mm-hmm. And then we go to the community, say, we have a new energy system equipments, but you should have agreement that you should protect the forest. Mm-hmm. That's our purpose.
Yes.
So how can we do that? So we can help you. So we just introduce our model from China and then go discuss with the local people, see how we can do the conservation project together. So they also take their actions, and they also have solar systems. Yep. And then we have the small revolver funding at the community, and they can support their sustainable livelihoods. So you can see the coffee planting and bamboo planting and rehabilitation. So that is really help their SDG targets. So that's for perfect. For this project, we really connect the climate change, biodiversity conservation, and your sustainable development together. So that's really, I think, is typical cases how we can just meet this.
And also it's a great example because China, for years, China has actually had great success on these kind of decentralized renewable energy, but it's a kind of model that how do you get that model on the Belt and Road, right? Belt and Road is for big infrastructure. And so this is another example that I'm glad you gave for the audience to understand that GEI, you guys are a beautiful matchmaker and you kind of help connect things in an original way. Another question came in, and where the AV said, because we had some technical difficulties at the beginning, you can ask minutes for, we're going to go 10 minutes over if you guys can still hang around in the audience. I got a question from Katie McInnes from the International Program of International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council. And she asks, is there any governance or support for wildlife rehabilitation in China outside of species like pandas, right? She wants to know if there's an example of like, what are a couple of ways that the Chinese government is doing wildlife rehabilitation in China? Can you give a few short examples?
In China, sorry?
In China. So in China, there's a lot devoted to pandas, but what are some other big kinds of Chinese government investments into biodiversity and wildlife protection?
Yeah. In China, there's a really, since 2015, maybe if you know about a little bit about the Chinese conservation system, there is a big reform about our protected systems. We call it national park-based natural conservation system reform. That means we want to establish a new biodiversity conservation, especially according to our new system of national parks since 2015. That means we will just build up a series of national parks across China. It can be arrived 10% of Chinese land. So that's huge, right? So far, that's so far. It's the total area already just over past the US's national park system already.
You beat us already? Dang it.
Yes.
That's okay.
That's really big.
And actually, the last live meeting that I had before COVID was exactly on this topic. We had some folks from Paulson Institute and the U.S. Park Service, that there's been a lot of government to government and U.S. Chinese NGOs cooperation on developing national parks. Now, I have another question from Iman Wang from the University of California. Iman asks, I read that the dams on the Laluzangbu River within Chinese territory have impacted the river level during the winter in Cambodia. And this has led to destruction of mangroves in Cambodia. Do you know if this is true? And if so, are there plans to remedy the situation? So this is a good question, but Chinese dams, how they're impacting downstream. Do you know about this example in Cambodia?
Yes, a little bit, but not too much. I have honestly, But this is some kind of true, but some not true. I can tell you a real story because India makes sense. The Nature India just interviewed me 2 years ago about the Yaluzambu Dam. Maybe they have the hydropower dam over there. I can tell you that it's just some kind of planning. It's some kind of plan. It's not the truth. This plan is not just finalized by our government. Mm-hmm. You cannot find any finalization for the dam. It's just a
dam, on the Yalu-Tsangbu River, you're saying?
Yes, Yalu-Tsangbu River.
So there's no dams. There's no dams yet.
No dams yet.
Okay.
No dams yet so far. And even they suggested by some people, it's not really by the central government. It's by some people, I must say. It's by some experts, some department people, some officials, but not for all. So actually, there is a different voice in China also. It's not just one voice. It's one voice say some people support the dam because they think that's really helpful for China's electricity. But on the other hand, there are really many experts, professionals, NGOs, and other voices. They just object this kind of project. So this is really strong together. It's not just federalized. So, but people outside maybe think this is a federalized one. They must build the dam already. This is no.
But they haven't. Okay, well, that's good. So let's move on. So, but I should note that sometime in the near future, I will be getting folks from Southeast Asia and GEI to talk about the mangrove issues. Yes. So just so that the person who asked the question will talk more on mangroves. I have a question from De Jur at the Environmental Law Institute. He is curious, has GEI implemented any projects that are helping local governments in China with climate change adaptation? Particularly, he was interested in like local fishing communities that are starting to have problems because of climate change impacts. So do you guys do any work with communities on climate adaptation problems?
A lot. Yeah, okay. Jen maybe is familiar with some projects, especially in Grassland, Tibet, and Qinghai Tibetan areas in China. So that is very significant because of climate change, because the glacier melting and the other grasslands ridgeland degradation because of the climate change. It's very significant if you went there. You can see that because the hinterlands has the grassland degradation. You can see the black soil. They get the desertification over there every year by year. So you can see it's very significant. So for us, we can go there. We cannot change the climate change over there. Yeah. So yes, that's true. So we can only sense, we can see how the people, on one hand, these people can find another livelihood if they can do as is sustainable and use the local resources. They can do that. The first sense, and the second sense, how can we just help the local people restore their grassland? So that's the two sense we go there. And in the past 10 years, for me, it's almost 10 years work there with the local people, the local headmans, and just help to these two things: protect the biodiversity and restore the degraded grassland or ridgeland. And on the other hand, we can find some sustainable, livelihoods. For example, handicrafts, the traditional handicrafts with their traditional culture and ecotourism. How can we help these people do that? And that is really meet the climate adaptation, I think.
And one thing I want to add to that, because when I was in China working with GEI and Peng Kui, we had a project called Storytelling is Serious Business. That was in 2016. And that was when he was developing this citizen science initiative. And what I think is really interesting about what GEI also does that you didn't mention yet today is that when you're doing this work, like the citizen science work, gathering this information, that's information that you're able to communicate to the central government, because they don't have that kind of detailed on the ground information. And I think it's encouraging that, China did just pass a new plan on adaptation, but any kind of plan on adaptation needs data. So are you going to be continuing in other projects to do reports and help the Chinese government know about adaptation trends in China?
Yes, they are continually, actually, especially for the monitoring by the local people, indigenous people. We just input this concept to the government, local government. Say the local people really can just monitor for their local places, biodiversity, for example, for wildlife, for water monitoring. So they can just get this information. And this is really help with the local government and central government alone. These people can do the same things. It's not heard by the professional people. So that is really helpful for the national park systems because, for example, in Sanjiangyuan, they just hired many herdsmen just to do the monitoring or patrolling for their biodiversity. It's just each one from each household. So they can just get a compensation a little bit. It's not a salary, but it's a compensation. It's not so cost, but they can just protect the wildlife and the nature. I think that's a really good example for the citizen science can just help.
Do you think that in Sanjiangyuan that these herder families, do you think that the volunteers or the people who are getting compensated, do you think someday that they can become part of a true national park service in China?
I think so, because according to Sanjiangyuan's reform, so many other national parks were so adapt this kind of a message. So they think this local people really mean something. This is the matters also. So they can just involved in this local people to protect the biodiversity. It's not just by the government.
Well, great. Well, so time just flew with you, Peng Kui, and I think we're going to have you come back to have more conversations because again, I'm working at GEI on my climate and food project, and I'm happy you put your if you're okay, we'll put your PowerPoint on our website or at least your contact information.
Sure.
Because again, this is if you guys are looking, where's the hub for networking in China on biodiversity? It would be it's GEI, but also Peng Kui. But thank you so much, and you probably need to get some rest, getting all ready for all that you're going to do at the CBD. But thank you very much. And thank you for the audience for tuning in. Sorry, there was a little problem with the stream at the beginning, but the full PowerPoint, the full PowerPoint and the full presentation will be up on our website soon thereafter. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all soon. Bye, Peng Kui.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks all the audience. I hope you can just join the CBD. Also can just come to channel back. I think everything's changing right now. So please.
Hopefully we can. I want to get back. Come see you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.